All right, we're going to be talking about Leviticus chapter 13 today. We're going to jump right in because it's a very long chapter. Okay, Leviticus 13, 1 through 3. It reads, it says, Yahuwah spake unto Moshe and Aaron, saying, when a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a scab or a bright spot, and it be in the skin of his flesh like the plague of leprosy, then he shall be brought unto Aaron the priest, or unto one of his sons the priest. Now this word scab here is sapakha, number 5597, and it means to manage, as not to manage, to mange. That's a big difference. The mange as making the hair fall off. The priest, it goes on to say, the priest shall look on the plague and in the skin of the flesh, and when the hair in the plague is turned white, and the plague in the sight be deeper than the skin of his flesh, it is a plague of leprosy, and the priest shall look on him and pronounce him unclean. Now, first of all, we have some olive tithes in here, and I believe everyone's familiar with the olive tithe that's here today. But we see here an olive tithe with the Shema, speaking of consumption, and this is exactly what leprosy do. It tends to consume its what's the word I'm looking for? Its victim. It tends to consume its victim. And we have another olive tithe with the Vav down here in verse 3. And the Vav speaks of something that hooks something or attaches something to something. And as we see, this consumption is attached or hooked to the person who's pronounced unclean. Okay, now it says, when a man shall have in the skin of his flesh a rising, a consumption, a scab or a bright spot, and this is like an example of scab. This is a leper. Not a pretty picture. Here's another one. See, the leprosy will cause the limbs to just fall off. So you see where some of her digits have, fallen off, joint by joint. Very, very, very terrible disease, So this is, what leprosy looks like. Now, it spoke of a bright spot, and this is a leper, and you can see, what it means by the bright spot. It spoke of when a man should have in the skin of his flesh a scab or a bright spot. Yeah, and it says, and when the hair in the plague is turned white. And so, as you see here, he has the bright spots, and also his hair is turned white. Here's another example. Again, you see the bright spots, and you look up here, you see her hair is turning white. Here's someone else with the hair's turning white. You see the bright spots. See, she got a little coming over here on this side as well. And yet another example of this gentleman here. His hair done turned white, and he's getting the bright spot. Just reflecting on scripture. We'll read Numbers 12, 9 through 12, because it speaks of one of the matriarchs of Israel. It says, and the anger of Yahuwah was kindled against them, and he departed. And speaking about the time when Miriam and Aaron, kind of was plotting against Moshe because he had married an Ethiopian woman. It goes on to say, and the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moshe, Alas, my Adonai, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. Let her not be as one dead, of whom the flesh is half consumed, and he cometh out of his mother's womb. You know, so you see, like the picture I shown with the woman with her limbs were actually falling off. You know, that can and does happen, unfortunately, with this type of plague. And here it is, we see the bright spots. This is not a pretty thing. You know, it goes on. Can I have my next reader, my first reader, actually, read Leviticus 13, 4 through 6.
Will you repeat the address and numbers scripture that you just read?
Oh, that's Numbers 12, 9 through 12.
Thank you.
Yep.
And if a bright spot be white in the skin of his flesh, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague 7 days. And the priest shall look on him the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight may be at stay, and the plague spread not in the skin, then the priest shall shut him up 7 more days. And the priest shall look on him again the 7th day, and behold, if the plague be somewhat dark, and the plague not spread not in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him clean. It is but a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean.
Okay, it says, if the bright spot be white in the flesh of the skin, and in sight be not deeper than the skin, and the hair thereof be not turned white, then he's to be shut up for 7 days. You know, and the priest shall look on him on the 7th day, and behold, if the plague in his sight be at a stay, you know, if it done stop progressing and the plague spread not no more, then he shut him up 7 more days. And the priest shall look on him again on the 7th day, and behold, if the plague is starting to get dark again, and it's not spread in the skin, then he's clean. You know, and the priest is to pronounce him clean. But a scab, but it is just a scab, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. You know, so if you see something like this, you know, and you know, it goes away. This is psoriasis, and you know, it forms a scab, but then it gets better and it goes away. That's okay. You know, it's not a leprosy. Verses 7 and 8 says, but if the scab spread much abroad in the skin, after that he hath been seen of the priest for his cleansing, and he shall be seen of the priest again. And if the priest see that, behold, the scab spreadeth in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a leprosy. You know, so if it starts off like this, you know, and then it starts progressing, you know, then it's to be considered a leprosy. You know, so that's not going away. That's getting worse. Okay, verses 9 and 10 says, when the plague of leprosy is in a man, then he shall be brought unto the priest, and the priest shall see him, and behold, if the rising be white in the skin, and it have turned the hair white, and there be a quick raw flesh in the rising, it is an old leprosy in the skin of his flesh, and the priest shall pronounce him unclean, and shall not shut him up, for he is unclean. So this word quick, where it says, but be quick, raw flesh, you know, this word is mikyah, meaning preservation of life, you know. So it's speaking of, you know, there, if it has be white skin, the priest see him, and behold, if the rising be white in the skin, and have turned the hair white, and there be a preservation of life, raw in the flesh, like, you know, it's trying to scab over, it's trying to save them, you know, then he's still unclean, you know, and that would look something like this, you know, where it starts off with sores, but instead of, you know, progressively, you know, digging down and eating away the flesh, you know, it scabs over, you know, such as what happened with this gentleman. It starts scabbing over, but it's still a leprosy, you know, so this is still would be unclean, you know, and we have an altab here with the Vav and the Mem, which speaks to, you know, what's attached to him within the midst of the people. The Mem actually speaks to water, and could speak to counsel. Maybe he got some bad counsel, and this is the result of it. So we want to make sure we get our counsel from the right place. We want to stay attached to Yah and take note of what he says. Verses 12 and 13, and if a leprosy break out abroad in the skin, and the leprosy cover all the skin of him that hath the plague from his head even to his foot, wheresoever the priest looketh, then the priest shall consider, and behold, if the leprosy hath covered all his flesh, he shall pronounce him clean that hath the plague. It is all turned white. See, and sometimes that'll happen as the leprosy progressed and started off with just spots, as with this this kid here. You know, may recognize him. He used to be around, used to be quite popular. But if you look on his fingers, you can see where they were turning white. You can see the white spots. You know, he had the bright spots, and this is why he wore the glove. In all actuality, was to cover that. You know, and as he began to get older, you know, it started to spread. And see, if you look at this old photo, you can see it over on the side of his face, and even at the top of his head where he's trying to cover it up with his hair. You know, so even as it says, you know, it broke out in the skin and it covered him, but if it comes to be all white, you know, such as we see him in the latter days, you know, then he's to be pronounced clean. You know, so what they call this now today, they call this vertigo. You know, well, scripturally speaking, still leprosy. He's probably the most famous leper that ever lived. You know. Let me have my next reader read verses 14 through 21.
But when raw flesh appeareth in him, he shall be unclean. And the priest shall see the raw flesh, and pronounce him to be unclean, for the raw flesh is unclean. It is a leprosy. Or if the raw flesh turn again, and be changed unto white, he shall come unto the priest. And the priest shall see him, and behold, if the plague be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean that had the plague, he is clean. The flesh also, in which even in the skin thereof was a boil, and is healed. And in the place of the boil there be a white rising, or a bright spot, white and somewhat reddish, and it be showed to the priest. And if when the priest seeth it, behold, it be in sight lower than the skin, and the hair thereof be turned white, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy broken out of the boil. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair therein, and if it be not lower than the skin, but somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up for 7 days.
Okay, so here it is. We see that when the raw flesh appear, he's automatically unclean. Which only makes sense. So because it easily, the blood, there's a lot of pathogens in the blood and everything, so it can easily spread something, maybe even the leprosy itself. But here it is, we see the priest will see him. It says, behold, if the plague be turned into white, then the priest shall pronounce him clean that have had a plague. So it's just telling us how to determine whether or not whether or not they're clean or unclean. And this is an important aspect of Torah, to be able to recognize, when something or someone is clean and unclean within your midst. I mean, there's still some good information to know even now today. And we can see, like, even a person with a boil isn't necessarily a leper, but a leprosy can come out of a boil. And this is what's speaking of here in verse 19. Now my next reader read verses 22 through 28.
And if it spread much abroad in the skin, then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague. But if the bright spots stay in its place and spread not, it is a burning boil, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. Or if there be any flesh in the skin whereof there is a hot burning, and the quick flesh that burneth has a white bright spot, somewhat reddish or white, then the priest shall look upon it. And behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and it be in sight deeper than the skin, it is a leprosy broken out of the burning. Wherefore the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. But if the priest look on it, and behold, there be no white hair in the bright spot, and it be no lower than the other skin, but in somewhat dark, then the priest shall shut him up 7 days. And the priest shall look upon him the 7th day. If it be spread much abroad in the skin, the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a plague of leprosy. If the bright spot stay in its place and spread not in the skin, but it be somewhat dark, it is a rising of the burning, and the priest shall pronounce him clean. For it is an inflammation of the burning.
Okay, it's a good thing Yah is being specific. He's taking his time and he's being specific in this. We see here in verse 25, it says, and the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the hair in the bright spot be turned white, and if it be in sight deeper than the skin. It's a good thing he specified in sight deeper than the skin, because I can just see someone, trying to dig down in somebody's flesh to see if the hair was white up under it, But here it is. We have some more instructions as to whether or not one is clean or unclean, if they're a leper or not a leper. My next reader, verses 29 through 37.
If a man or woman have a plague upon the head or the beard, then the priest shall see the plague, and behold, if it is in sight deeper than the skin, and there be in it a yellow thin hair, and then the priest shall pronounce him unclean. It is a dry scale, even a leprosy upon the head or beard. And if the priest look on the plague of the scale, and behold, it be not in sight deeper than the skin, and that there is no black hair in it, then the priest shall shut up him that hath the plague of scale 7 days. And in the 7th day the priest shall look on the plague, and behold, if the scale spread not, and there be it no yellow hair, and the scale be not in sight deeper than the skin, he shall be shaven, but the scale shall he not shave, and the priest shall shut up him that hath the scale 7 days more. And in the 7th day the priest shall look on the scale, and behold, if the scale be not spread in the skin, nor in deeper sight than the priest shall pronounce him clean, and he shall wash his clothes and be clean. But if the scale spread
so this speaking about leprosy concerning the skull, the dry skull, it can be leprosy or it doesn't have to be leprosy, and it speaks about looking for yellow hair, and this is kind of what it would look like, Now, if you notice, like the scar here, it's bad, but you don't see any yellow hair. The hairs that's in it hasn't turned yellow. But on the other hand, this person right here, you see the skull and you see the hairs are starting to turn. See, they're turning yellow. So this one will be clean and this one would be unclean. Verses 38 through 41 says, if a man also or a woman have in the skin of their flesh bright spots, even bright spots, then the priest shall look, and behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be darkish white, it is a freckled spot that groweth in the skin. He is clean. Freckles is okay. You still can be clean with freckles. It says, and the man whose hair is falling off his head, he is bald, yet is he clean. And he that have his hair falling off his from the part of his head toward his face, he is forehead bald, yet is he clean. So, if it so happens to come off, in the middle or the forehead, such as this gentleman or myself, and he's still clean. And it happens to some of everyone, and as we see, his forehead is bald. I don't know, this is probably, from the looks of it, a 6 head rather than a 4 head, but, he should have just let it go, We're going to make the hairline go back to the middle of the head, but, okay. But he clean though. He clean. He's not a leper. My next reader, verses 38 through 46.
If a man also or a woman have in the skin of their flesh bright spots, even white bright spots, then the priest shall look, and behold, if the bright spots in the skin of their flesh be dark and white, it is a freckled spot that groweth in the skin, he is clean. And the man whose hair is fallen off his head, he is bald, yet he is clean. And he that hath his hair fallen off from the part of his head toward his face, he is forehead bald, yet he is clean. And if there be in the bald head or bald forehead a white reddish sore, it is a leprosy sprung up into his bald head or his bald forehead.
Not cool.
Then the priest shall look upon it, and behold, if the rising of the sore be white, reddish in his bald head, or in his bald forehead, as the leprosy appeareth in the skin of the flesh, he is a leprous man, he is unclean. The priest shall pronounce him utterly unclean. His plague is in his head, and the leper is whom the plague is. His clothes shall be rent, and his head bare, and he shall put a covering upon his upper lip, and shall cry, Unclean, unclean. All the days wherein the plague shall be in him, he shall be defiled. He is unclean. He shall dwell alone, without the camp shall his habitation be.
And this was a terrible fate for those lepers. They were put outside the camp. They couldn't stay in the camp. So you would, if you could envision this, you would probably see as they were nomads traveling through the wilderness. You had this real large group, and then you had this little group straggling behind. Of the lepers that were put outside the camp. This was not a cool thing, and it causes me to reflect upon the woman who touched the hem of Yeshua's garment. She was unclean, and yet she was going around, she was touching somebody, you know. That was a capital punishment. She could have been stoned to death. It just shows her great faith that she had, you know, in Yahshua, and in that he could actually heal her, and that she would be healed if she grabbed on to his tallits. But we see here, this was a very shameful thing, you know, even that the leprous man, when he's unclean, you know, he was to rend his clothes and his head bare, and put a covering over his upper lip and cry, "Unclean, unclean." You know, I pray that that wasn't a common occurrence happening throughout the days. You know, people running out screaming unclean. You know, but this is leprosy. You know, it was ultimately a curse that Yah put on his people, and these curses still are falling on Yah's people because of disobedience. You know, so, you know, that's the lesson we need to learn in all this, is that, you know, when we do what we're supposed to do, adhere to Yah's laws, statutes, and judgments, that these things won't come upon us. Our next reader, 47 through 52.
The garment also that the plague of leprosy is in, whether it be a woolen garment or a linen garment, whether it be in the warp or wool of linen or of woolen, whether in a skin or anything made of skin. And if the plague be greenish or reddish in the garment or in the skin, either in the warp or in the wool, or in the woof, or in anything of skin, it is a plague of leprosy, and shall be shown unto the priest. And the priest shall look upon the plague, and shut up it that hath the plague 7 days. And he shall look on the plague on the 7th day, and if the plague be spread in the garment, either in the warp or in the wool, or in a skin, or in any work that is made of skin, the plague is a fretting leprosy, and it is unclean. He shall therefore burn that garment, whether warp or wool, in woolen or in linen, or anything of skin, wherein the plague is. For it is a fretting leprosy, it shall be burnt in the fire.
Okay, so here it is. It's talking about leprosy within garments, whether it's a woolen garment or a linen garment. When it speaks of warp or woof, warp speaks to the length, and woof speaks to the width. You know, so when it's talking about, you know, either the warp or the woof, rather if it's in the strands going lengthwise or widthwise, you know, and when it speaks of fretting, it's speaking of painful. You know, as horrible as leprosy looks, you know, it was actually a painless disease on the most part. You know, it looks horrible and it has some horrible consequences, but it was, at least it wasn't painful. You know, it wasn't painful on the most part, but there is a fretting leprosy that is painful. So, you know, that's just, ooh, my goodness, you know, to actually go through that end, to go through excruciating pain in conjunction with it, you know, that's, oh, that would be almost unbearable. You know, but it's speaking of leprosy in garments, you know, so if you're going through your wardrobe and you see something like this, you know, that's what Scripture is speaking to as leprosy. You know, it's unclean. You need to get rid of it. You know, don't try to shine them up. Don't try to save the suit. You know, just go ahead and get rid of it. And I know them your Italian dress shoes, but you know, you gotta let it go. You know, and likewise with your favorite jeans, if they're your favorite jeans, and you gotta go put on a suit to go get them. that should be a telltale sign that it's time to let it go. You know, but leprosy can not only get into our flesh, but it can also get into our wardrobe as well as our house. You know, and as the book of Leviticus addresses all these types of leprosy. You know, so it can be in leather goods, it can be in cloth. You know, here's that shoe I was missing. Looking for that thing for the longest. And come find out, you know, leprosy had it. You know, but if you find it and it looks like that, it's time for it to go. You know, so it can get in the skins, and this is an example of, you know, this, leprosy being in the skins, you know, because they used to make clothes of leather and these things. So, verses 53 through 59, my next reader, please.
And if the priest shall look, and behold, the plague be not spread in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in any of the skin, then the priest shall command that they wash the thing within the plague is, and he shall shut it up for 7 days more. And the priest shall look on the plague after it is washed, and behold, if the plague have not changed his color, and the plague be not spread, it is unclean. Thou shalt burn it in the fire. If it fret inward, whether it be bare within or without. And if the priest look, and behold, the plague be somewhat dark after washing of it, then he shall rent it out of the garment, or out of the skin, or out of the warp, or out of the woof. And if it appears still in the garment, either in the warp, or in the woof, or in any thing of skin, it is a spreading plague that shall burn, that wherein the plague is with fire. And the garment, either warp or woof, or whatsoever thing of skin it be, which shall wash, if the plague be departed from them, then it shall be washed the second time, and shall be clean. This is the law of the plague of leprosy, and a garment of woolen or linen, either in the warp or the woof, or anything of skins, to pronounce it clean or to pronounce it unclean.
Okay, so again, this is a summation of the leprosy and the cloths and leathers and things of that nature. You know, so here it is, we're well equipped with how to determine leprosy within our bodies, as well as within the things that we wear. You know, our clothes, our coats, our shoes, so on and so forth. You know, and if it's unclean, you know, then we're to get rid of it. And on a spiritual level, you know, this just speaks to any place that, you know, that's not right in our lives, that Yah has cursed, and to let us see that it's not right, then we're to correct it. You know, whether it be something that we're doing, i.e. in our flesh, or if it's dealing with our covering, i.e. our clothes, you know, which speaks to our covering. You know, and if that covering, no matter what that covering may be, you know, if it's anything besides Yah, it may be, you know, your job. You know, you may have a job that actually, you know, asks you to lie. You know, and where you think that job is covering you, you know, that job is actually exposing you to the curse of Elohim. You know, I say that because I had a job that actually, they actually trained us to lie. You know, and it was in real estate. You know, in all actuality, when I went to school to be a real estate agent, you know, they literally taught us to lie to the people when we were trying to get a listing. You know, I don't know if any of you are familiar with real estate, but, you know, most people in real estate make their money off the listings, not off of actually selling the houses, but listing them. You know, for if you list it, you get a commission no matter who sells it. But if you sell it, you know, you can get a commission, but the money is made off of listing. And they've literally taught us to lie. You know, and there's many jobs out there who will ask you to do likewise, or do something unscrupulous. You know, and where you thinking that that's, you know, how you make your living, that's what's covering you, you know, that's what's exposing you. It's not actually what's covering you. You know, if you claim that Yah is your El and your King, then it's Yahuwah Yahweh, and He's the one that covers us. So on a spiritual note, it's showing us that, you know, Yah is actually showing us where we're uncovered, or showing us where we're cursed at. You know, so we need to take heed to that, you know, and put it out to camp. You know, so if there's something that you're doing and Yah's causing a curse on your body, you know, then cease from doing it. You know, for a curse causeless shall not come. You know, and sometimes it's not as easy as finding out, you know, why it's there to begin with. You know, sometimes it's not as easy as with the leper, where you just see it sticking out like a sore thumb. You know, sometimes you got to really search for the reason, you know. But there is always a reason. Well, that's Leviticus chapter 13. That's all I have for you today. Pray it was a blessing.